After a week with this Maverick Lobo, it's clear that Ford's engineers understand something the Germans have forgotten. While they're busy adding complexity and electronic layers to their performance systems, Ford took a different approach with this truck. They focused on getting the fundamentals right, and the result? A $36,000 pickup that delivers, perhaps literally. In this episode, we're going to look at what Ford got right and why that matters more than just the badge on the grill. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. I think with this Lobo, Ford's figured out that sometimes the best performance technology is the kind of technology you don't have to think about. I've spent a lot of time with this truck, and this thing offers more feedback and more engagement than most cars costing twice as much. And they do that through some simple but sophisticated engineering choices instead of just complexity. And before we get into what this Lobo is like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. With the refreshed Maverick for 2025, Ford took the opportunity to bring us this Lobo. It's a street performance truck inspired by the sport trucks of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It's specifically engineered with autocross and spirited driving in mind, creating the first factory performance compact truck in decades. It's uniquely styled among all Mavericks, and inside, of course, there is grabber blue and electric lime stitching. Under the hood is a 2-liter 4-cylinder. It is turbocharged, makes 250 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 277 pounds of torque at 3,000 RPM. Cooling's upgraded, comes from the Maverick with the 4K tow package. The transmission is a 7-speed automatic with paddle shifters. It's the same as the other Mavericks, but skips second gear, just like the European Focus ST and Edge ST. It is all-wheel drive, and there's a twin-clutch torque vectoring rear diff, and it can transfer up to 70% of available torque to the wheel with grip, actively helping rotation through a corner. Steering is electrically assisted, but it is Lobo-specific. The steering rack comes from the European Kuga, which is kind of like our Escape, and it is notably quicker. Suspension uses McPherson struts at the front, multi-link at the rear, traditional dampers, but this one sits a ½ inch lower at the front and a little over 1 inch lower at the rear, and all of these calibrations are specific to Lobo. Brakes are dual piston at the front with larger rotors from the European Focus ST with upgraded pads. There is the Lobo mode, otherwise known as track mode, as standard, and it reduces stability control intervention and optimizes torque vectoring when the corners get interesting. Wheels and tires are 19s, and these very unique wheels capture everybody's attention on the street. Towing capacity of a Lobo is 2,000 pounds, payload is about 1,000 pounds, and curb weight is 3,814 pounds. Weight distribution is 58% front, 42% rear, but on this channel we know it's not static weight distribution that counts, it's how you use it. Now let's talk about what Ford has built here, because to me it sounds like someone in Dearborn was having a midlife crisis in the best possible way. You've got that 2-liter turbo 4 that makes 250 horsepower, a twin-clutch torque vectoring rear diff from the Bronco Sport. Brakes are from the European Focus ST, and the steering rack is from the European Escape. It's like Ford's greatest hits album, but for handling components. And the result is a vehicle that shouldn't exist in 2025, something that prioritizes driving engagement over committee-designed comfort. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this, and if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. Here behind the wheel, the biggest difference we find with these 25 Mavericks is the large infotainment screen, which I've come to appreciate, but the fundamentals are all the same. Decent seating position, great interface to the steering wheel. I've got lots of adjustment in this seat, and there's still a lot of headroom here. I think pretty much anybody about any size can fit in this Maverick, despite it being a compact pickup. Love the shape and the size of the steering wheel. It's just perfect for this Maverick. Encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3. There are some shift paddles, and of course we do have the two colors of stitching on the steering wheel, as well as throughout the cabin. That is a signature to Lobo. As well, with Lobo, we do have the embossed seats, which is kind of a nice touch. And after that, this is pretty much standard Maverick. That's not a bad thing, of course, because visibility is excellent. Hip point is pretty good because this is more like an escape hip point. People buy crossovers and SUVs so they don't have to climb in and out of cars, and this is just easy for people to get in and out of. So the hip point's great. People will appreciate that. The instrument cluster is primarily digital. There are some LED readouts on the outboard sides of the instrument cluster for fuel level as well as water temperature. After that, a lot of the controls are in the screen. Climate controls are all here. There is a volume knob, thankfully. And of course, Ford's signature rotary shifter. The one thing I do have to say, and it baffled me when I first got in the Lobo at the launch event, where the heck are the drive modes located? Well, it turns out there are little mode buttons here on the steering wheel, and at first glance I missed them. But now that I'm used to this Lobo, the switches are easy to find, but there is absolutely zero drama here with these little switches for drive modes. In terms of spaciousness, well, it's a Maverick, you know the deal. It is on the compact side, but for you and your front seat passenger, there's plenty of room. There's a decent amount of storage all throughout the cabin. There's a wireless charger here, and you can connect to the infotainment system either wired or wirelessly. We are obviously wireless Apple CarPlay, and I'm on the latest version of CarPlay, which maybe we'll talk about in another episode, but it is very, very cool. In the back seat, well, I can just fit behind myself in the seating position. That's just fine. Two adults, be happy there over moderate distances. And what Ford has done with this Maverick is included some underseat storage so you can keep some larger valuables out of sight. The bed is very versatile, all kinds of tie downs and different things you can do. There is a power outlet back there as well, so if you're doing some outdoorsy things or need to power something, well, you can do it with your Maverick Lobo. When you spend some time behind the wheel of any Maverick, you kind of understand Ford's interior design philosophy and its function over flash, but they also make it pretty good while they're at it. This ActiveX upholstery is excellent, seems very, very durable. But I do have to say, after spending a lot of time with this Lobo, I'd like some more bolstering in these seats, that's for sure. I've been able to play with this a lot in the corners, and these seats could use a little bit more bolstering to support me in the corners. Ford's interior designers clearly spent time in actual performance cars, and the result is a cabin that feels purpose-built for driving, not for Instagram posts. And it's refreshing to sit behind the wheel of anything that prioritizes the person who's doing the driving instead of the person who's taking photos of it. And here's what's impressive here. Ford didn't try to reimagine ergonomics. They just stuck with what works. Even in the Lobo, the seating position is spot on. It's low enough to feel connected to the road, but high enough that you can actually see over traffic. Even the steering wheel is properly sized for the Lobo. It's not like they took it from the Mustang and called it fancy. And Ford kept the good stuff simple and the simple stuff good, like the volume knob. That's absolutely fantastic, though I'd love climate control buttons and dials. Still, there are real switches for some of the essentials, and the touchscreen responds faster than a cat video goes viral on TikTok. And it's clear they designed this interior for people who want to drive because it just works. The infotainment screen itself is responsive. The system's UI is very straightforward. Connectivity is a breeze, but yes, the climate controls are built in here. Thankfully, they're easy to use. And then we connect with wireless CarPlay and it just works like it should. But this screen, however, is positioned vertically, and it's like it's meant to be shared with everybody in the cabin rather than oriented towards the driver. And that's one of the misses that I find with this 2025 Maverick. Now, in terms of acceleration, this will do 0 to 60 in a couple of ticks under 7 seconds. And while that's not rocket ship quick, it's also a bit misleading because this isn't meant to be a drag strip superstar. This is a different kind of thing. And what really transforms the driving experience is how the torque is delivered from the 2-liter EcoBoost. And the thing is, that torque curve is beautifully flat. You get meaningful acceleration from maybe 2,000 RPM all the way to redline with no dead spots or sudden surges. The all-wheel drive works to put down power with precision, eliminating any idea of wheel spin and drama that plague most performance vehicles. It's the automotive equivalent of a great musician, and Adam Miller, I'm looking at you. Technically excellent, but never showing off. While other manufacturers are chasing horsepower numbers for marketing purposes, Ford focused on making the power they have work properly. And what they've got here is a Maverick that is quicker in the real world than the numbers would suggest. So we do have to talk about the transmission in this Lobo, because what Ford's done is very unusual. They made an automatic that enhances the driving experience specifically for this Lobo. Now, it's a 7-speed unit, though it's technically an 8-speed, and they actually skip second gear. And the thing is, it's because Ford's engineers prioritize performance over EPA ratings for this Lobo. In Lobo mode, it holds gears more aggressively, it downshifts on deceleration, and responds properly to your inputs on the paddle shifters. And the shift programming is so good in any of the drive modes, it makes you forget that you really don't need to shift on your own. While some manufacturers are adding sophisticated CVTs and 10-speed automatics that feel like you're driving through molasses, Ford developed one of their existing transmissions that actually wants to be part of the performance equation. In terms of handling, because I've driven a couple of different variants of the Maverick lately, and that includes the Tremor as well as the hybrid, this Lobo, rides noticeably firmer and corners a heck of a lot flatter. And I think this highlights Ford has mastered the dark art of suspension compromise. And specifically, that's how to make a truck that rides like a performance car without punishing you like one. Think about this for a second. They lowered the ride height front and rear, stiffened up the springs as well as the shocks, and somehow they've developed this Lobo to ride firm without being harsh. And while a lot of manufacturers resort to adaptive dampers and all kinds of suspension sophistication, Ford achieved these results with carefully chosen conventional components. Even on the terrible streets of Toronto, ride quality strikes a perfect balance between sporting intentions and daily livability. And for me, it just reminds me that I'm driving a performance-oriented truck without punishing me on my morning commute. And these brakes, absolutely dig these, and they work exactly as promised. Sure, if I were to track this autocross, which I would never do, I'd probably want a more aggressive pad in here, but on the street, these brakes are fantastic. And it's another great example about how carefully chosen components beat the sophisticated ones every day. Sure, they took the 2 piston calipers from the Focus ST, then paired them with larger rotors with slightly more aggressive pads and called it done. No brake-by-wire and no ABS intervention unless absolutely necessary. The pedal feel is consistent and control is precise. You always know exactly how much braking force you're applying through that pedal. Modulation is excellent both in performance driving environments as well as daily driving. And for me, in any kind of vehicle that's performance-oriented, the brake pedal is so important. And I can control the attitude of this Maverick on corner entry with the precision of much more expensive sports cars. The steering is quicker in this Lobo because they pulled another steering rack that fits from another product, and it makes perfect sense. Turning into a corner, there's just a little bit more immediacy, a little bit more urgency than other Mavericks, and it suits the character of the Lobo. There's a little bit more heft to the system, even more when you are in the Lobo mode, and you do get a little bit of feedback through this system, even though it's electrically assisted. It's just a direct and honest steering system that is the mark of a good performance vehicle. And sure, Ford took that torque vectoring rear diff that's used in other more benign applications and tuned it for this application. And how they've tuned that is very interesting. It's able to transfer up to 70% of available torque to the wheel with grip. And that helps you rotate in corners, maintaining all important traction when you're exiting those corners. But unlike complex German systems with electronic this and electronic that, Ford's system just works in the background. It doesn't need you to tell it whether you're attacking corners or just daily driving. It figures it out and adjusts appropriately. And the result is this Lobo can just rocket out of corners with the immediacy of a really good performance car. Now, let's be real, with these tires, the levels of grip aren't that high, and they love to make a lot of noise as you approach their limits, that's for sure. And I think the tires are one of those components that Ford engineers kind of expect some of you performance driving enthusiasts to upgrade after you take delivery of your Lobo. In day-to-day driving, they're just fine, they're quiet, but yeah, their ultimate grip is really not that significant, and yeah, they love to make noise around their limits. Overall balance of this Maverick is pretty good, especially in Lobo mode, the way it's distributing torque. And when you're at its limits, you can dance with this a little bit. As we found out at the launch event, you can have a lot of fun with this Lobo at its limits. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that these tires don't provide a tremendous amount of grip. Even here over this speed bump, even with the stiffer suspension, it's really not that punishing, but this is definitely not a Tremor, mind you. The Tremor would be quite happy to soak up these speed bumps at slightly higher speeds. Yeah, the funny thing is this does feel quicker in the real world. That 0 to 60 time definitely deceiving. How do you spec yours? Well, thankfully, it's fairly easy. What you are looking at is a 2025 Ford Maverick Lobo and Velocity blue paint with the black onyx interior. In the US, base price is $35,930. Add the 702A group, like this one is spec'd, for the Lobo High trim, and as tested is $41,425. In Canada, base price and as tested is one and the same. It's $47,800. And here's where Ford's pricing strategy demonstrates their confidence in this Lobo, because they're not trying to nickel and dime you with all kinds of options. The base truck at $36,000 includes the Lobo mode, torque vectoring, the proper suspension, upgraded brakes, and 19-inch wheels. And seriously, that's everything you need for driving enjoyment. And Ford's pricing is all about value, not artificial scarcity. They're selling capability, not exclusivity. In terms of speccing yours, well, it's simply a matter of choosing whether you want the standard or the high, getting the color that you like, because all of the goodness of the Lobo is baked right in from the factory. And before you get all excited about ordering your Lobo, we've done a deep dive into the forums and the subreddits to see what actual owners are saying about their Lobos. This is the stuff you only learn after living with this truck for months, not hours, like we're doing this week. Here's the thing that Ford hasn't mentioned in their press releases. I think this truck was designed with the explicit expectation that owners will modify it. The cooling system is over-engineered with components from the 4K tow package, but Ford deliberately limited towing to 2,000 pounds. Why? Because those extra thermal margins aren't for hauling trailers, they're for sustained track sessions. The brake calipers tell a similar story. Ford borrowed dual piston units from the European Focus ST, but paired them with street-oriented pads. They're essentially providing you with a brake upgrade foundation and expecting you to install proper track pads yourself. It's like Ford's engineers are winking at the enthusiast community. But here's one thing Ford probably doesn't want you to know. Those seats, well, they're not great for track use, according to owners. The forums are filled with complaints about drivers sliding around during the very cornering maneuvers Ford designed this truck to excel at. Several owners are already planning seat swaps as their first modification. There's also an unusual ergonomic issue with the accelerator pedal being unusually short, causing drivers' feet to slip off during spirited driving. Now, I can see that, but this goes back to driving Driving 101 and make sure you pick the right footwear. And despite this being a performance truck, you get the same digital display as a base Maverick, just a tiny bar graph for a tachometer. Ford built an excellent foundation for enthusiasts, but they clearly expect you to finish what they started with the right mods for your type of driving. These insights come from real owners using their Lobos in the real world, and these can be much more revealing than anything I can discover during a week-long test. My verdict? Well, here's what Ford figured out that some of the Germans haven't. Driving engagement isn't designed by how many driving modes you have or how complex your systems are. It's about creating a direct, honest connection between your inputs and the vehicle's response. The Lobo's torque vectoring doesn't try to do everything, it just does one thing exceptionally well. Steering doesn't attempt to simulate different feels, it just gives you the real one. The brakes don't offer multiple personalities, there's no brake-by-wire here. They just stop the truck with precision and consistency. Ford's engineers understood that sometimes the best solution is the simplest one, executed properly. While the Germans are busy over-engineering systems that isolate drivers from the driving experience, Ford built a truck that actually puts you back in control. And that's not just good engineering, that's understanding what driving enthusiasts like us actually want. What I really love about this Lobo is that it's bringing something back, a fun part of automotive culture, and that is the sport compact truck. With this Lobo, you don't have to choose between practicality and fun or affordability and capability. Ford engineered a truck that delivers on all fronts without the typical trade-offs. It's fast enough for track days, practical enough for daily use, and sophisticated enough to impress enthusiasts at Cars and Coffee. Plus, it's simple enough to live with on a daily basis. And this shouldn't be revolutionary, but in today's market, it absolutely is. Most manufacturers have convinced themselves that customers want either hardcore performance or comfortable luxury, never both. And what Ford's done with this Lobo is prove that false dichotomy wrong, and they've done it at a reasonable price. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 Ford Maverick Lobo. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Ford Maverick Lobos. And since you've hung around this long, well, have a look at an episode about a totally different flavor of Maverick, and that's the Tremor that actually goes off-road. And I think you'll find that to be a very different beast than this Lobo, and I think you might enjoy that episode. Thanks again for watching. See you again next time.